What's going on, guys? Video here with a brand new video, and let's just all talk about the fight that's going to be happening in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The very first time that the UFC is ever going to be in Saudi Arabia hosting fights. Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. This is a fight that a lot of people have wanted to see. It's a little bit of a surprise to me as well that Robert Whittaker is taking this fight recently coming off of a win against Paulo Costa, against an individual who's very good in wrestling, against an individual that has some great striking, against an individual that is the complete package in Khamzat Chimaev, being the new kid on the block in the middleweight division. His last fight being in Abu Dhabi, being against the former welterweight champion of the world, going up in weight on a week's notice, Kamaru Usman, and winning that fight. But he did fade at the end. There's one thing about Khamzat Chimaev that we all know, is that he does tend to fade in his fights. He also faded in his fight against Gilbert Burns, the last man to give him a serious challenge besides Kamaru Usman. Those two being the only individuals, Gilbert Burns being a former welterweight title challenger, and Kamaru Usman being the former welterweight champion of the world. Now he's going to face the former middleweight champion of the world, Robert Whittaker, who has faced the who's who in the middleweight division. I'm talking about Yoel Romero twice. I'm talking about Jared Cannonier, Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya twice. Robert Whittaker's faced everyone in the middleweight division, believe it or not. Even Dricus du Plessis, the current middleweight champion of the world. And now you got the Reaper versus the Wolf. This is an absolute great matchup for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And not just them for crying out loud, just the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia can go to the side. The fans, we all wanted to see a fight of this caliber, and now we're going to get it. And it's going to happen in around June time. So it's a great matchup for both of these individuals. Robert Whittaker being from Australia, and Khamzat Chimaev currently residing in UAE, currently in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. Both these individuals not having to travel too far like they usually have to do when they're fighting in the U.S. So that's a great thing. A relatively short flight for both of these individuals, which means that the time change isn't really going to have a big effect on both these guys going into a fight. Khamzat Chimaev being the great grappler that he is, representing the country of Sweden where he used to reside multiple times and winning many, many championships, getting many accomplishments, getting many rewards. And then on the other hand, you've got Robert Whittaker that has faced many wrestlers in the past. He faced Derek Brunson and faced Yoel Romero, who was an Olympic medalist in the Olympic Games for wrestling, representing the country of Cuba, not once but twice, and beating him, even though he was dealing with the wrestling the majority of the time, and the crazy strikes and the power that Yoel Romero had against him. So when we look at this fight from a retrospective, you got Khamzat Chimaev, who's a grappler, but he has a lot of power on his hands as well. He went toe-to-toe against Gilbert Burns, one of the nightmarish opponents that he can be able to go for in the welterweight division. And you've got Robert Whittaker, he used to be in the welterweight division, ended up getting knocked out a couple of times, and moved his way up to middleweight division, being the best move that he ever could have made in his whole entire life, in his whole entire mixed martial arts career as well, winning the interim belt against Yoel Romero, and then going on to become the undisputed middleweight champion of the world when GSP won the belt against Michael Bisping and decided to vacate it and retire from the sport of mixed martial arts as a whole, and then going on to defend the belt many and many and many times in the future. Robert Whittaker, he's the complete package, a great mixed martial artist, and you could have all seen that with the last fight against Paulo Costa. It was a masterclass performance, even though he got rocked at the very end of that first round. Now, if Khamzat Chimaev, who tends to go at 100 miles per hour when his fights tend to begin, if he keeps that pace of fighting style through 5 rounds, it'll be a very hard time for Robert Whittaker to be able to catch up to him. But Khamzat Chimaev has had issues with his cardio in the past, and he did have issues against Kamaru Usman, who took the fight on short notice, 1 week's notice, going up a weight class in a new weight division for both those individuals. That was Khamzat Chimaev's. It was his coming out party to the middleweight division against the former champion in a weight class lower than his that he used to be in himself. Now the problem that I have with Khamzat is that if he does not get the cardio fix, he won't be able to have an efficient fight against Robert Whittaker, because Robert Whittaker can go the full 5 rounds. We've seen that many times in the past. Robert Whittaker, if he can be able to take Khamzat Chimaev to those deep waters, he will have the upper hand, and there is a good chance that he can be able to finish Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev has never gone the full 5 rounds in his UFC career. Robert Whittaker obviously has many times against very dangerous individuals. Robert Whittaker has been battle trained to defend takedowns, even take individuals down in the past. Khamzat Chimaev, the only time that he's ever really tested was in his last 2 fights as well. So the wrestling, I'm going to say that the wrestling is going to cancel each other out in this fight. But whoever does get the first takedown will definitely dictate the rhythm and the flow of the fight. Now, with Robert Whittaker, if he can take Khamzat Chimaev, pin him against the cage, smother him, and just tee off, I believe they can really do a lot of damage as well. Robert Whittaker has a lot of power. I believe he has more power than Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev, he just likes to put a lot of pressure on his opponents, and his opponents tend to wither. A lot of people believe that he would have won 5 rounds with Kamaru Usman, then he would have been in extreme trouble, and I do believe that as well. So the wrestling goes to the side of Khamzat Chimaev, but the striking and the overall mixed martial arts IQ has to go with Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker has great fighter IQ. Khamzat Chimaev has made mistakes in the past. He could have had a point taken off in his fight against Gilbert Burns because he hit him after the bell. He got a little bit mad, he got a little bit agitated, and decided to punch Gilbert way after the bell. You know, a point could have been taken or deducted from him. Not good octagon IQ. Not good fighter IQ. On the other hand, you've got Robert Whittaker, who's never been in any type of controversy whatsoever during his fights. And he always tends to listen to his coaches no matter what. When Khamzat had his fight against Gilbert Burns, his coach was screaming at him, telling him not to do this, not to do that, because Khamzat was going against the wishes of his coach. When you have coaches in your corner, they have a game plan that you have to be able to execute in order to win your fights. When you go against the game plan of your coaches, majority of times you tend to lose. So whoever tends to execute their game plan coming into this fight will definitely have the upper edge of being able to win this fight. I really do like this fight, and I believe that if Khamzat Chimaev can fix the cardio issues, then he wins. If Robert Whittaker can be able to evade the strikes and be able to sprawl, get a wizard in, be able to circle out, and being able to defend the takedowns, then he'll be able to win himself because he's great at evading strikes. And when you do have him hurt, he does tend to come back. When you do have him hurt, he comes back 10 times stronger, and that's what happened in the Paulo Costa fight at the end of the day. He out-toughed him. He outsmarted him. And that's something that he can be able to do against Khamzat Chimaev as well, who is still relatively new to the UFC. The UFC trying to make it into a megastar that he is. The UFC trying to push him towards a title fight, which is why they urged him to move up a weight class. Now, he's not with the All-Star team anymore in Sweden. He does have a new team with him. So I'd like to see what happens with Khamzat Chimaev, Robert Whittaker, usually being with the same team that he's had for the majority of his career now. He did go through a point in life where he's just training almost every single day, and it really tired him out. He did fix that issue. He's not training as much as he used to, so it's not tiring out his body. And he's coming into these fights with a lot more energy as well. The only people that have really beaten Robert Whittaker in the middleweight division, there's only been 2 guys that have beaten him. And both these guys were the champions, for crying out loud. We're talking about Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya. Those are the only 3 losses that Robert Whittaker has on his middleweight record. Khamzat Chimaev has a lot of climbing to do in this fight if he wants to come out victorious, if he wants to come out as the victor. Robert Whittaker just has to follow his plan, has to continue to keep the movement, has to continue to evade, head movement at all time, keeping himself covered, and being able to select his punches the best way that he knows how, like he did with Paulo Costa. If we see that Robert Whittaker coming into this fight, he's going to get that win. If we see a Khamzat Chimaev that ends up tiring out and decides to commit some errors, he's going to end up losing. But for this fight, I'm going to go with the Reaper Robert Whittaker, and I believe that he's going to derail the hype train that is Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev also having weight issues in the past as well. So when he comes into this fight, is he going to have any more weight issues? Is he going to be fine? That is also going to dictate the Khamzat Chimaev that we see coming into that fight in Saudi Arabia against Robert Whittaker. Appreciate you guys for watching this video. Once again, I'm sorry about the alarms beeping, chirping, ding, ding, ding. I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm just trying to do my absolute best here. Stay safe, stay blessed. Later, guys.